Welcome to Spiritually Fierce, the podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rikki Jane Adams, principal and founder of the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence and creator of the Spiritually Fierce movement. Spiritually Fierce is not just a phrase. It is a movement of awakening consciousness of which we are all a part, if we want to be. In each episode, we'll explore what it means to be spiritually fierce, how to become it, and why it is the revolution in consciousness that will save the world. Join me and my fierce guests for deep conversations on spirituality beyond the trinkets and superstitions of the new age that will support you to increase your power to serve. Welcome, dear beloveds, to Spiritually Fierce, the podcast. And I am here today with the gorgeous Sibylle, who is a current postgraduate priestess with the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. She is also a graduate of the Method and Trainer programs, and she is based in South Africa. Now, Sibylle describes herself as the chaos disruptor, which is a term I love. And her job is to support people and animals to bring Zen to their lives. So disrupting our patterns of chaos to invite us into that peace that is our birthright. I'm going to let her tell you more about that. But I am so grateful to have you, beautiful, wise woman, with us today, all the way from South Africa.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and always love having a conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise. And I think, it's been a total blessing to my life since you arrived into the Institute, not that long ago, as you reminded me recently. I feel like it's been forever, but it has only been a little more than a year or around that long. And I would love to know, how did your journey with the Institute begin? How did you find us?
It was during COVID and in lockdown, and so many summits, things were happening online. And I think it was in a summit called Unlock Your Soul Code. You were doing a talk, and I didn't know you. I'd never heard about you. And it said the free gift was going to be like your book, Spiritually Fierce. And I'm going, oh, I could do with some of that. So I listened to your talk, and I resonated with everything you said and got the book. And as we do, it ended up in a folder on my laptop, and I actually didn't get to read it. So time went on. And because I was on your email list, you were doing a couple of challenges on Facebook for various things, like 5-day challenges, I think it was. And I went, oh, okay, let me just check this woman out a little bit more. I want to see where this is going. And I did those couple of challenges. And then just over a year ago, last year in February 2023, I did your priestess initiation challenge, and I won one of the prizes, which was a session with you. I had no idea it was a method session. I'd never heard about it. I arrive and you do the session, and I walk out of there and I'm going, what was that? And a week later, I was signed up for your method training, and here I am. It's been a fast track in a year. So I have followed you a little bit for a while. Yes, but we've really only gotten to know each other in the last 13 months.
Yeah, what a blessing that is. I would love to know about your story more broadly, but I'm really interested about what happened for you, I guess, in that method experience and then the method training that was so impactful or important to your work and your identity as a spiritual being.
So, I've been through a lot of really challenging life experiences, and I've experienced trauma and fears in various sense, especially fear. And my experience was that fear brought me into such internal chaos that I couldn't figure out who I was, where I was, or what I was supposed to be doing. And when I wrote my book, The Courage to Be Me, two quotes from Nelson Mandela really stood out for me. And the first one of his is, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers his fear. And coming into the method training, I've been doing work on myself for 23 years before I came into the Institute. And yet, what was unearthed and dug out in the method, I was like, where is this still coming from? It was so powerful because it just nailed everything right down to the very core. And that's where the focus of my work is working from the bottom up, working from the core inside out.
Yeah.
And what I've learned in the method, and then what got amplified in the trainer program, and even more so now in the postgrad program, is what freedom really is. And freedom is also my word for 2024.
Yeah.
And my car's number plate is Be Free. Literally, it's a customized plate, Be Free. And the second quote of Mandela that really now I feel ties in very much with the values of the Institute and what we are learning in the postgrad especially is, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And that's also a direct quote from Mandela. And that really epitomizes what the Institute stands for. Because we're not only working on our own liberation, we're doing it for the greater good of all.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what I feel Mandela stood for as well. And for me, tomorrow is the 27th of April, right? And that's Freedom Day in South Africa. And that's the day I launched my book in 2016. So
Wow.
for me, this is a really potent time. And I feel his energy is around as well.
Oh, I love that so much. And yes, I think, as an example of someone who did not let the fear of, that was undoubtedly within, but also what was imposed on him by the system, to limit him, he didn't stay inside those chains, and he rose to be, who he is now to all of us, that example of that fearless leader. I would love to talk about this book because I feel like maybe I knew about it, but maybe I didn't. What is this book about? And I guess what led you to write it?
I've always wanted to, there was always the story was burning to be written. And then a friend of mine kind of pushed me into it. And he said, you've got to do it. And I'm going to keep you accountable. And you're writing your book, and I did it in 3 months. So it really is, there was a lot. I went into wanting to take my own life. So I planned it. I was going to take my car off the most scenic route in Cape Town. And there was a lot of planning around that. And then on the day that I did want to actually get in my car and never come home again, it was like God took my hand from my car keys and put them onto the phone. And I picked up the phone and made a call for help. And I don't remember that.
Wow.
And this book was really wanting to be written when I was really starting to become more visible for myself. I was allowing myself to become more visible and wanted to share my story. The story was really wanting to be written through me.
Yeah.
And I just decided to write it. And it's the story about growing up in the privileged life in South Africa as a white person born into apartheid.
Yeah.
And all of the ramifications from that. And yet then I talk about my spiral into this suicidal depression, what it feels like emotionally, the judgment from others, everything else. And I really wrote it from that heartfelt point inside, and also then my journey out of it and how I came out of it. So that's really the gist of my book. And so many people have opened up and shared about them wanting to do suicide and all of that, and never having had the courage to speak about it. And very interestingly enough, the first person that opened up about that was my father.
Wow.
So he tried to take his car off a bridge and the barrier didn't give way.
Wow.
And he said when the car bounced back, he went, well, then I'm still supposed to be here. And it was almost the same similar experience to mine. Couldn't get the keys, got the phone, called for help. So, and as he said, he's never opened up about that to anyone in his life before. I was the first person he actually could open up because of how I'd written my book. So I knew there was a message for people that it's okay and you can talk about it. Someone had to start talking about what was not being spoken
Yeah.
about.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am excited and I need a copy of the book now. Clearly, I would love to read that. And I'm excited that we get to write another one together as part of the postgrad. But I think that, in terms of that lived experience of having gone from the extreme chaos of believing that it would be better not to even be alive, to be where you are now, is, that is the embodied wisdom that allows you to be here to serve others. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about what does the chaos disruptor do? How does she help us move from that, whatever it may not be as extreme as being suicidal, but certainly most of us live with chaos as part of our experience day to day. So how do you serve as that chaos disruptor?
Um, for me, it is about really listening to where someone else is at. And the work we did in the trainer program and how to really hold space for someone is crucial for that. So using that, allowing others to share, to just allow themselves to be heard. We don't need sometimes to be fixed. We're not broken. We just want someone to listen, someone to be a sounding board. So I want to be that sounding board. And I've always had the really great ability to intuitively check in, like where someone is, what's going on really underneath. And it's just something sometimes I can pick up. And I will ask questions and just allow them to delve a little bit further. And in that, when people feel like they're coming in like a scrambled ball of wool that a cat has gotten hold of, it's like I'm untangling the threads with them, and through that they're getting their realizations. And then I have this uncanny ability. I don't know if it's been on the road for 7 years when I went through bankruptcy and had to give up my home, and I've been on the road for 7 years now. It's being able to put systems in place and figuring out, okay, what's the first best step we can do? What's the next best step we can do? And in that, and empowering people to also make their own choices and make their own decisions. And sometimes just getting clarity brings a peace in itself, where the dust can settle and they go, wow, I never saw it that way. And just that pattern interrupt, just that, wow. The best analogy I can give is you're sitting at a traffic light and your mind's wandering and there's just traffic zooming by and your traffic light is red and you're watching all the cars go by, and suddenly this truck comes by and it has this really amazing advert on the side, and it's like a pattern interrupt. It like interrupts your thoughts and you go, oh, that's interesting. It's that kind of thing. It totally disrupts the treadmill, the hamster wheel you've been on, even in your head or internally. And just that, wow, just that opening is enough for the process to start.
I love that description. And undoubtedly your intuition, as you say, is extraordinary. It was extraordinary even before you came into the Institute. And that you blew me away with the quality of the work that you do with the method and with all of the processes of the intuitive intelligence trainer. I would love to know a little bit about how your spiritual journey began. There's obviously been some very big extremes in your life and lots of different challenges and changes, but how did your relationship with God or your intuition begin?
I wrote in my book as well. I'm just going to quote this because this is the starting point, and I picked it up this morning. I just opened the book and I said, right, if I want to share something from my book, what is it? And it opened to this. So our intuition is a powerful GPS that uses the vehicle God gave us, our body, to guide us through life. Make friends with your intuition and it will surely serve you in the best way possible, always. So I had two children. I've got two children. So they were born 18 months apart. So it was like having twins. And we were living quite far away from Cape Town. So we were living up country near Durban, another major city in South Africa on the coast. And that was where I noticed that I was really spiraling. We had no support system for the kids. I was a mom on call 24/7. My daughter was really ill. My son was still very young. And I really stood out in the afternoon as the sun went down and looked over the hill opposite the house. And I just said, dear God, there has to be more to life than this. Please help me. And I went out every night and I just put that prayer out and I put it out. And then when we came to Cape Town, then that whole journey, the suicide journey and everything started. And that was really when it really broke wide open. I've grown up in an esoteric house. I was pulled out of Catholicism because my parents didn't agree with all of that, because my dad was kind of very on the forefront with that, but it was very hidden in the 1970s. That was like taboo. It didn't talk about it. Never mind, you got people coming to your house to meditate. That just wasn't done in those days. So my dad was the one that actually started me off, and I was in high school and I was sitting in spiritual circles with him, and we were going through books and going through texts, and I learned meditation, and he meditates every day. He's turning 97. He still meditates every day. So I've kind of grown up with that. I grew up with a father where there were crystals around and he'd talk about this and that, and he'd always open our minds to further than what we were being taught at school or in religious classes or anything like that. So it's kind of come over the years, but it really catalyzed and took on a life of its own when we moved to Cape Town in 2000, and my actual whole journey started. And it was through my body, actually, which I talk about in my intuition quote. My body was waking me up. I was seriously ill. I was physically ill as well. So my body was giving me the wake-up calls and going, you need to listen. And that often, I think, is a wake-up call for a lot of people. We'll get an illness or a disease or have an accident or something, and the body's really going, yuck, you need to wake up now. This is this far and no further.
Yes. Yes, I couldn't agree more. But it sounds very much like you had that true dark night of the soul experience to bring you to a place where God, the intuition, and the sacred would become the primary part of your life, not just something outside of you. So I would love to know then, once you sort of emerged from that, like, was it all at once? Did illness pass quickly, or how did you then sort of build a life that was more aligned with your spiritual nature?
I started then doing the work on myself. The call for help actually led me to our homeopath. And I mean, she'd saved my daughter's life twice already, so I trusted her. And because I was showing the early signs of colon cancer, she started immediately putting me on health protocols. I had to go for lots of physical work on the body. She also had a Reiki master she sent me to, which she worked with clients as well. She was very, very open-minded on all of that. So we started looking at the physical as well as the energetic. How do we start working with both to get me out of where I was at? I was hugely overweight. I was the biggest, heaviest I've ever been. So we had to work on that to really get my body to start functioning again, because it was shutting down. I also came across the Brandon-based journey work at that time. I was very privileged, and it was scary. Talk about overcoming your fear. She always does like a demonstration of her process, and she chose me as her volunteer out of 350 people. So my first ever journey process was done by her in front of 350 people. And I'm going, well, talk about having to overcome your fear. Yet my prayer for life was greater than the fear of not doing what I was being called to do and given the gift. So then I became a journey practitioner. I did my Reiki master. I've done various other things as well. And it was through all of that, through learning about my own aura and my chakras and my body. And being an optometrist, I knew the anatomy and the physiology. I did my iridology diploma, and so I dived more into that and found out how we can read the genetic blueprint of someone through their eyes. And so that for me was fascinating. I thought, oh, that's why that wasn't working on my body. My eyes were actually telling me that. So, it was amazing. So I learned so much, and through that and working with clients along the way, it really helped me to heal as I was serving them, and they were healing. And we all know we're each other's students and teachers. We learn from each other and we teach each other. Yeah, and through that, my rehabilitation started. And I also realized I needed to give up my career. So I had a 23-year career as a successful optometrist, and it was my dad's dream, not mine. I was in an abusive marriage, so not physically, but all other levels. And sometimes that's worse because it's the scars that you don't see that often hurt the most.
Yes.
So that took 19 months to finalize that divorce, which I had to initiate and keep working through to get through to the other side. So that was 19 months, tough time in my life too. And yet I learned a lot about that, about myself, about others. And coming out of all of that, I was able to start rebuilding a life for myself. Yes, so it's been a journey. It's not a process and a band-aid and one done and, one and done. It's a
Yeah.
process. It's
It is.
evolution. It's transformation. And
Yeah.
my transformation had to happen at the deepest level possible because my body was shutting down. It was just no
Yeah.
purpose for me here anymore.
What I love so much about what you're sharing is that because I know you now and where you are in your life now, that despite going through multiple experiences that may have taken other people's faith, it has only seemed to grow your faith and your certainty that you are of God, or you are God, however you might describe it, and that is what you are here to embody and then offer other people to know. And I really bow to you, because any one of those events that you describe could be enough to make people shake their fist at the skies and turn away from God. But you have continued to find and deepen that intimacy and faith, and undoubtedly then it equips you so powerfully to be that chaos disruptor for others, because very often we are looking for a reason or someone to blame or an event outside of us that, well, it's not my fault, this happened to me, right? So I would love to know, what is your vision for your work as the chaos disruptor? How do you see it unfolding in the world? How do you want to keep serving?
It's really to help people unravel that whole knotted ball of wool that's kind of happened from life, because life happens and we're so busy trying to keep surviving sometimes that we lose sight of our bigger picture. So it really is about identifying the behaviors and the patterns and even the thoughts and the fears and everything that is causing that chaos, and just going, stop and let's see what is here, and really being able to serve in that way to really help people transform their lives. And I know it can sometimes sound like such a cliche, but the transformation really has to happen from the inside out. It's an inside job. I went for the astrology readings, and I went for the card readings, the angel card readings, and I tried all of those things that we see out there. And everything that's happened to me, like you say, it wasn't about being a victim to life, like why me and woe is me. It's like, what is this showing me about myself that needs to transform, that needs to heal? And sometimes that's enough to break the chaos of that spin that we're in.
Yeah.
And just shifting that perspective.
Yeah.
So I would and I share a lot sometimes with my story. It's through story that we identify those parts of ourselves that we are not kind of coherent with, or that are not congruent. So a lot of it comes through my story, and my vision is now God's given me a vision to create a retreat center that I can bring people to that is completely Zen in its setup on all levels. So everything, and it will be to disrupt the chaos from people's lives, bring them in there, and yet empower them as well, give them the tools, give them everything that they need for where they are in their journey to be able to go back and integrate that into their lives. Because it's like going on a diet. You go on a diet, so you change everything radically for what, 3 weeks or a month, and then you're going back to your old habits again. Well, what did that do?
Yeah.
It's about having the tools to go forward and to help people with that and say, well, these are easy tools to incorporate in your everyday life. I was living in my car at one point. I needed specific, really simple things to be able to get me to the next step. So what is the easiest thing I can do for myself right now that's going to get me out of this? And I think having that experience will help me take people to take baby steps. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, is we're very good at overestimating what we can do in the short term, and we underestimate what we can do in the long term. And we think things have to be really difficult and make it complicated, and then it's only going to work. I'm like, simple, quick, easy, let's go. You can do this right here, right now, in this moment.
I love that. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And often we turn away from that, right? Because it's that self-reliance that we don't want to take. We want someone else to have the answer or give us the special magic sauce that's going to fix it all. And that self-responsibility is the missing piece, I think, in so much of what spirituality promises as a tool of transformation. And clearly the Chaos Disruptor is going to support us with that. I want to ask you, it's a little bit broader than I guess the question so far, but because you are living in South Africa, tomorrow is Freedom Day, I would love to know just a little bit about how is that celebrated? What is life like for you in South Africa? What happens on a day like that? And, I guess the legacy of Mandela's life and work in the world.
It's there's lots of celebrations going on, and I just see, like, I see people and they're posting on Facebook, and it's like Freedom Day and everything. So there's a whole build up to that. There's festivals that are being held, and people will just create music and come together and to celebrate. And it really is an honoring of what Mandela did and the legacy he's left and the hope that he has of how we would rebuild South Africa. And for me, it's going a little bit deeper than that, because Mandela and F.W. de Klerk, who was the white president at the time, they were collaborating and they were in communication. And it was de Klerk who actually then made the decision to hand over the reins to Mandela and to set him free from prison. So that whole, it's like Ubuntu, we call it in South Africa, is that whole goodwill kind of gets woken up on this day.
Yeah.
And people remember what happened on the 27th of April in 1994. And it's that kind of energy and that kind of vibe. So for me, it's a really special day because I'm here still living to celebrate it. And secondly, it's an honoring of whatever both parties, and it's interesting, it's the white and the black, whatever both parties, both sides of the spectrum did to be able for this nation to come together. So for me, it's a deep honoring of that, because it took both of them to work at this. This is not just one man that did it. There were two parts that played.
Yeah. I love that.
So for me, it's a huge honoring of that, because from the two of them, they've given us the permission of freedom in South Africa, and they've given us that gift.
Yeah, I am so grateful for you sharing that because, of course, I've never been to South Africa. It's a place I'd love to visit, and learning about that at such an auspicious time, and what it feels like to be there in that energy. And yes, I am very grateful that you are here to celebrate another Freedom Day. Grateful that you've joined me for this conversation. I have loved you from the first moment I met you and just bow to all of your wisdom. And I'm so excited to continue to support you, to take your medicine to the world and to offer us that Zen that we so desperately need. So thank you so much, my darling, for your time. Can't wait for the next book. And
On its way.
make sure we share all of the links as well so people know how they can find you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you do, because it's enhancing the service and the medicine I can share with the world. So I'm deeply grateful to you as well for the space you hold for all of us.
Well, it is my absolute privilege.